I would like to welcome you to Sabbath Rest Book Talk for May of 2017. Welcome to Sabbath Rest Book Talk, where fiction is good for you, where we take a look at what fiction does for us to make us more human and less like cantaloupes, because cantaloupes can't find meaning in symbolic thought. So feel deep, don't be a cantaloupe. I'd like to introduce everybody to my lovely co-hostesses. We'll start with Rebecca Willen this evening. Rebecca is a freelance editor and works PR for the Dominican Sisters out in Ann Arbor. So Rebecca, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hello, or I should say salve in the appropriate theme for tonight.
Oh, yes, because we're going to be talking about Rome and Britain. And that was for Eagle of the Ninth that Rebecca recommended, and I loved it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Next, I'll introduce Carolyn Astfalk. She is the author of newly released Rightfully Ours, a young adult romance from Full Quiver Publishing. It's barely over a month old. So Rebecca, Carolyn, give everybody a little hello.
Yes, hello, good evening. We're going to test my memory of classics here as far as Latin. I know salve, so we're good.
I won't try anymore on you guys.
We know a little bit of Latin here, but not enough to do anything but get us in trouble. I don't even know enough to say things like "I'm going to salt the fields of my enemies," which is apparently something that gets taught in Latin class. Anywho, speaking of adventures, let's talk about adventure. This month's focus is adventure and how fiction is used to show us that adventure is valuable. I'm pretty confident that humans are the only ones that intentionally take on an adventure, that can go looking for something specific, or we're really the only ones that can go on a quest that has any sort of meaning beyond the immediate gratification, a long-term quest. You know, the quest to destroy the ring is different than my dog's quest for whatever bit of food I dropped on the floor while I was cooking. Humans were really capable of thinking long-term and thinking symbolically. And this month I learned all sorts of things about adventure just from reading books with that in mind. So how about you ladies? What did you kind of get any experience from reading with the idea of, okay, what is adventure and why is it valuable?
Well, when I was comparing the books as I finished them, what I noticed was different is, so in Alice in Wonderland, her adventure is mostly a reactionary thing. She just experiences. But the Eagle of the Ninth is it's a quest. It's a more active, he directs it. And I thought they were both adventures, but it's a totally different approach to them, really.
Yeah, that was the same comment I was going to make about Alice, just that it seems and purposeless in many ways. And with Eagle of the Ninth, and I think with Discovery too, you have a sense of doing something for a reason, doing something for a purpose that's higher than oneself.
Yeah, I see that. Just to kind of review for anybody that's watching, this month the books that we're looking at, our children's/read aloud book is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, the classic. Our book for the YA audience is Eagle of the Ninth by Rosemary Sutcliff. And then our adult book selection is a science fiction first contact space adventure called Discovery by Karina Fabian. You know, let's talk specifically about Alice first. Let's talk about Alice in Wonderland, because that's kind of one of those books that everybody has either read or knows enough about it that they can, you know, think of some things that they've heard. Like everybody's heard about the Queen of Hearts, and everybody's heard about the caterpillar with the interesting habits. Interesting hookah. So yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines of what you both said about Alice, that it was less intentional. It was more something that just happened to her. And I wonder if that's because she was a child, and children have, because of their lack of maturity, they have less intentionality and things just happen to children. Girl, And in Victorian society, hold on, was that Victorian or Edwardian?
I think Victorian.
I think Victorian too. So let's go with that. Either way, same sort of thing. That the idea that things happen to girls where boys go out and make things happen. And also it was more obviously more fantastical, and it sounds strange to say there's something more fantastical than a science fiction adventure where people with all sorts of varying religious beliefs are kind of stuck on this can and shoved out into space, all looking kind of for the same thing, but not exactly. But it's I guess I've always not struggled, but Alice in Wonderland is not one of my favorite children's stories, and maybe it is because of that lack of intentionality, that lack of everything just kind of seems coincidental. What did you ladies get out of reading about the experience of an adventure that just happens to us and not one that we choose for ourselves?
Well, I think one of the things that struck me reading Alice in Wonderland again, because I haven't read it for years, was, to me, adventure, and especially as I see it in literature, you don't come back from an adventure the same that you left. I think fundamental aspects of adventure is that it changes you. You come back a different person. Better, usually. What struck me with Alice is she off being a brat, and she kind of ends being a brat. Sorry, she really bugged me this time around.
Do you think she bugged you more now because you're a more mature adult than when you read it the first time?
I think the first time I read it, I was caught up in all of the fantastical things that she was experiencing, and I didn't notice. I just noticed the world that I was, kind of looking through her eyes, but I didn't actually look at her. And I think this time, because I was paying more attention to her, to see how she moved through the adventure, kind of realizing that she's not actually a very nice person, and the experience that she has in any way, even it doesn't seem to bring her to any sort of maturity or even just a different experience of the world. I don't know.
Carolyn, what do you have to add on to that?
Well, it's really not one of my favorites either, honestly. But I've only read it as an adult, and I could see just reading the first 2 chapters aloud to my children, they were much more interested in it, I think, in the imaginative description. Whereas an adult, I'm kind of like, well, this is haphazard. We're hopping all over the place here, and there's not much of a thematic course of action, and it's not directed. And I kept getting hung on like the overuse of words that Carol used and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I agree with Rebecca. She can come off as bratty, but yeah, just that kind of undirected aimlessness.
But now that I'm hearing you both talk about that, and I felt the same way really. When I will admit I didn't read it. As an adult, I listened to it and it's as an audiobook because I have we do a lot of audiobooks with our kids, and I think maybe it was sort of a reflection of how we go through life, child, adult, whatever, and we are so often finding ourselves with these completely random, very strange people walking across our paths, like the caterpillar who wasn't making a ton of sense. How many people do we cross that don't make a ton of sense? How many people are like the Queen of Hearts who has to have their own way and is not aren't capable of seeing how irrational they are, and we have to deal with them.
It's actually
go ahead.
It's actually a really interesting way of looking at the book, because I just realized you could look at it as a normal world, but through an absurdist lens, kind of bringing out the weirdnesses, things as an adventure, rather than as just the normalcies of life.
Right, because this month is about adventure. It's not about a quest. And you don't have to be on a quest, I guess, to find yourself on an adventure or to find your life adventurous.
If you don't mind me connecting this to Eagle of the Ninth,
Not at all.
When you talk about it in that sense of the ordinariness of life maybe being an adventure, that's kind of what I saw as the biggest adventure in Eagle of the Ninth. Wasn't just the quest and all the travel and that typical adventure. Was the biggest adventure, I thought, for Marcus was relationships, because he develops a relationship with his uncle, with his friend Eska, with Kodia. So that to me was where the most growth and adventure was for him.
Yeah, I definitely, I see that. And now that you're saying that, I was almost thinking that Eagle of the Ninth and Alice in Wonderland were like the most opposite books ever, because I think I can think of one coincidence in the entire book of the Eagle of the Ninth. And it was when, we're sort of moving on to Eagle of the Ninth, which is fine because we're moving along in time. The Eagle of the Ninth, just for anybody who's not familiar with the story, it's the story of a young Roman, I can't remember his rank.
He's a centurion.
Yes,
he's a centurion. Okay,
he's
so he's a centurion.
Yeah.
So he's in charge of 100 guys. 100 soldiers. And he has this goal of getting to retirement and buying his villa back in his home country of the Etruscan country back in, peninsula of Italy. And of course, everything goes wrong. He is horribly wounded, but survives a battle with the native peoples of Rome and Britain. He's pretty far in the north. I'm pretty sure they're in Scotland. They're not on the other side of Hadrian's Wall. So they're up in what is now to us northern England. He's horribly injured, so all of his dreams are crushed. But meanwhile, there's this backstory of his father was a member of the 9th Legion, and they had been sent up into the wilds of Scotland, out past Hadrian's Wall, and were never heard from again. And there's this rumor going around that the eagle, the standard of their legion, has been captured and is being worshipped as an idol by the. I had to send the book back. Is it Pix or is it? Because I know Eska, I hate to use the word sidekick because he's such a well-developed character. Eska, he's not a Pict. He's a Brigantes.
Yeah.
Okay. So he knows what we now consider lowland Scotland, but he's not one of those people not one of the nation that destroyed Marcus's father's legion. So Marcus has to take this big risk. He's not well enough to go back to active duty, but he is well enough to find out what happened to his father's legion. So that's where the adventure comes in. He, risks his own life. And what I really want to talk about this one is how adventure and freedom have to go hand in hand. Oh, hi, Kitty. Who's the kitty? That's Finn. Oh, so that's your roomie's cat. He looks like my old kitty. Hi, Finn.
So he wanted to come and sit with me.
Oh, no, this is book talk. So, if cats don't belong in book talk, then I don't know where cats belong. Anyway, Eska is a slave that Marcus buys, but before Marcus will take Eska with him on this quest, Eska his freedom. And that really struck me. Am I the only one who was like, oh wow, you can't really go on a quest unless you're free?
Yeah.
And what else do you guys think about Eagle of the Ninth?
Well, when you talk about the freedom, I was also thinking too that the quest and the adventure requires sacrifice, and you can't make that without being free, but that there was something you had to give up in order to pursue this goal. That was comfort or safety or health or all different kinds of things throughout their journey. but they had to sacrifice to attain it.
Yeah, I see that. How about you, Rebecca?
To me, I think one of the most compelling aspects is the freedom and the sacrifice that has to happen, because I think, actually, sorry, let me just backtrack for a second. One of the things that struck me reading it this time was Marcus's faith guided him through the course of his adventure. And he has sworn to Mithras, the sun god of ancient Rome, and the soldier's god. Has his own faith in his god. But it was interesting over the course of the book, I was noticing this time in a way I didn't earlier, of how that faith to the sacrifice and gave direction to the adventure. And it kept them focused, I think.
Yeah, like it kind of you kept hearing them talk about what they were going to do to remain clear-headed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's not, at least in our current culture, clear-headedness is not really valued anymore. Like, as you know, a survivor personally of some, you know, childhood trauma, the idea that is now like so celebrated in like so many pop songs, like, oh, I got so drunk I don't remember what I did, like the idea of I'm going to just surrender my memories, when memories are such a precious thing and clear-headedness is such a precious thing. It's interesting to me that the adventure and their freedom hinged on, and they were intentional about the hinging of their freedom on their ability to remain clear-headed. Their sacrifices couldn't be made if they weren't clear-headed. And how much they had to invest of their, you know, giving up comforts, even just the comfort of food. Like, you keep reading how many times, I mean, that's like, you know, what am I going to do? I'm going to go eat something, as you can see. But like they were so intentional that, okay, we have this big thing to do. I'm not going to eat so I can stay clear-headed. And I thought that was a really powerful thing to see in fiction, how humans have to choose not just what we're going to do, but what sort of mindset we are going to put ourselves in, try to do the things that we intend to do. Mm-hmm. So those are my thoughts. Any other thoughts on Eagle of the Ninth?
Let's see. I'm looking at my...
I think we've got...
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Sounds bungling. Go ahead, Carolyn.
No, I was just looking through my notes. No, I think we really covered pretty much what I had in mind. And for me, I was really more invested in the relationships. Like, I struggle to get through battle scenes, you know, in the beginning. Yeah. I'm like, you know, there's action, but I didn't feel invested in Marcus until he started interacting with people. You're like, oh, he has an uncle, you know, and then I could really grasp more of what was important to him. And especially, I think the style, too, and the point of view, it's not a real close point of view. So you don't see that as readily, you know, because it's a broader picture of the adventure, I think, too. So the point of view lends itself well, but it's not, I guess, what I'm accustomed to reading all the time anymore. So.
Yeah, and also just saying that I just want to say the language of this book was just so beautiful. Mm-hmm. It was so, like, just the language itself. It wasn't, you know, I read a lot of contemporary stuff anymore. So to be able to get back to a time when the language of prose had rhythm was just so amazing. Yeah. So Rebecca, thank you so much for picking this. If you could put into like one sentence why you said we should read this book, tell us what you would say.
I would say it's the kind of story I love best because you see a human, you see him in all his flaws, all his desires and his pride and everything, and you watch him go through an experience that both and makes him into a hero better. but you do it all the while seeing him for who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, you know, if I had a literary crush, one of my literary crushes would definitely be Marcus.
Well, you have excellent taste, I have to say.
So,
but I mean, literary crush, you know, being said, I also felt really good letting my teens read this, because for homeschooling, we're finishing up volume 1 of Story of Civilization, which ends with the collapse of the Roman Empire. And so it ties directly into what we're doing for history. And it was beautiful language, well written, and it had a realistic edge, but it wasn't a gratuitous or sensuous realistic edge, which I think gave the story greater value. There was no shock value. It was uplifting value, if that makes sense. So excellent choice, Rebecca. Thank you.
I'll put in a plug for her other books too. Basically, all of her young adult fiction is really good. And she writes a lot of historical fiction. So pretty much whatever time period you're studying, look for her books.
I will, because next year we're starting the medieval era. So I'll definitely look for her. So thank you. As we wind down, let's talk about Karina Fabian's first contact story, Discovery. Now I will fully admit, I didn't get a chance to finish this. I didn't get a chance to finish Discovery, unfortunately, because I don't know if you can hear in the background. I've got family over right now. They're probably being relatively quiet, which is really nice. My family is awesome. They're really helpful and they're really supportive. So that's pretty cool. But that I didn't get a chance to finish reading it, and I'm sad because I'm really excited to finish it to find out where the story goes, because I'm a little more than halfway through, but I can already see how adventure. I think this is a perfect title for this book, Discovery, because everybody in the book is discovering something new about their past, about their future, about, you know, their expectations, about the expectations of the people around them. Now, you guys both had a chance to finish reading Discovery, right?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously, try not to spoil it for me. If you do, that's fine. I'll survive. But what do you think, what was your biggest takeaway from Discovery about the value of adventure, about going after something? Because this is definitely a quest novel. No doubt about it. It's not a happenstance, accidental thing like Alice in Wonderland, but it is an adventure quest novel. So go ahead and talk to us. Who wants to go first?
I guess I can go. It's been a while since I read it, so I'm not going to give you any spoilers because I'm forgetting details already. Because that's how my mind is.
It's been a while since I've read it too.
But what's different about this one is, and Karina Fabian handles it, I think, remarkably well, is she has a large cast of characters, well-developed characters. But this quest it's not just an individual quest, it's a group quest. It's and people that are so varied, but yet they need to be cooperative. She has a segment of like miners, and there's scholars, and there's the nuns, and so they all have to work cooperatively, which I think gives it a whole different feel, really.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I like too about Discovery, especially with this theme of adventure, is the way Karina ties vocation and adventure together. Ultimately, I think what many of them are discovering is their vocation, not just discovering their religious vocation, but some of them are just discovering kind of who they're meant to be. And that really is an adventure, that discovery, telling of one's purpose.
Yeah, even just halfway through, a little more than halfway through, I can see that. There's like Carolyn said, there are a lot of different characters, and they come from different places, because we have the people who've excuse me, only ever lived on Earth. Then we have the people who have never been to Earth and have only ever lived in space, in some level of artificial gravity. And then there's a character called Alvlandra, if I'm pronouncing that even remotely correctly. If I'm not, Karina will probably find me and correct me. Who chooses to live in zero gravity all the time. And there's a whole culture around that. And how all of these vastly different people have to almost fight things out together. And it's the fight itself sometimes, at least where I'm at in the book, that leads to the discoveries, I think, about themselves and about the other people around them. So I think that's really powerful so far, and that's one of the things that's helping me to want to keep going, to find out what really does happen. Now the premise of this book is that, I don't think we said this yet, there has been a top secret discovery on an asteroid in the Kuiper Belt that appears to be a crash-landed spacecraft from an alien civilization. And in this particular world, humans have not yet had any contact with any alien civilizations. So they are going to, there's a, what's the word? Tycoon? I don't know if that's the right word. There's a space tycoon.
Yeah.
It sounds mining tycoon. Yeah, who funds this expedition to go find out what's in there. And for all of their surveying equipment and all their observations have indicated that there is nothing alive on this craft. So they're going out to what is presumably a dead craft, and I don't know if it stays dead because I haven't gotten that far. So that's another sign of good writing. I can't tell for sure yet what's going to happen, so that's a good thing. And in the process, we have sort of the main characters are the Sisters of Our Lady of the Rescue. It's an order of sisters, not nuns, sisters whose vocation is, whose calling is, charism, is to go out and rescue distressed spacecraft. So they have that particular calling. And then there are the miners who have been called into this particular mission because of their skill set. And then there are the scholars who follow this thing called the code. Oh gosh, I can't remember what the full name of the code is, but it's basically, it's kind of like a prime directive for to a certain degree, just far more codified. Well, it is code. And it's rules, sort of guidelines for living and working in space, but it's gotten to the point where some people treat it like a religion, where they treat law as religion, and so there's all sorts of interesting, I don't like using that word anymore because it's kind of got a bad connotation, and that's not what I want to use. There's lots of juicy conflicts going on between these characters because they have to work together on their way out to the Kuiper Belt so they can all train together and work together once they actually reach the discovery itself. So that's the plot in a nutshell so far. And I think, again, we come down to that there's a lot of talk, although maybe it's not outright so far, about freedom and how aligning ourselves with our particular belief set, whether it's a code of conduct or, a faith like Catholicism, or, the more evangelistic Christianity where, I hate to say it this way, but you rack up points by convincing people to become Christians too. So there's all sorts of interplay between these different groups and how they're each free to come and go from those groups. And some think that the ultimate freedom is to not ally with any sort of belief, not to align oneself with that. What did you guys think of the conflicts between all the different, I don't want to say religious groups, but all the different belief systems in Discovery on this mission? What did you guys see and what did you think?
Very complex, and I think it's very interesting. But I think what is most interesting about it is the way that ultimately a lot of those conflicts in order to challenges that they need to face, and those belief systems either end up strengthening a character certain circumstances, leaving them very vulnerable. I think, if I recall correctly, there's at least one character who at the limits of what he believes, that it's not enough.
Okay. I don't think I've gotten to that part yet. So now I'm like, I wonder which character. Don't tell me who it is. Wait, did you just say who it is?
I can't remember his name.
Okay. I was going to say, if you said who it is, the video cut out a little bit. The sound cut off a little bit, so I didn't hear. So yay. But don't tell me who it is. I want to figure it out. I don't know, Carolyn, what sort of thoughts did you have on that or on something else about Discovery?
Well, I think with that interplay, for each of the characters, they have different sins and histories that they have to reconcile. But there's kind of a parallel. I guess it's the internal and external conflict, really. But there's this large adventure, this big discovery with the alien ship. But then the bigger discovery is internal. And it's an adventure of discovery of oneself and of truth and, you know, what you do and don't believe, and then how you act accordingly.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm looking forward to finding out what happens as a result. So, yeah, any last thoughts on Discovery?
Just so you know, I don't read a whole lot of science fiction. I read little of it. But I think it's a great story. It's really, it's accessible to people that love science fiction, but it's also to people that like adventure, and it's also just a good read straight out.
Cool. How about you, Rebecca?
It's a good book.
Good book. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, it's funny to me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Cut out.
Are you back? You're back.
I'm back. No, it was just interesting. I gave the book to my sister as a Christmas present. And my sister was a cloistered Carmelite for a few years. Really impressed how Karina developed the characters of the sisters.
All right, good.
So
Yeah, I like how she portrays religious life as well, as something human rather than this, you know, otherworldly people who only know how to be mean. So these are it was much more realistic than I think most sisters get in our culture. More realistic a rap.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, thank you both for joining me this evening. Everybody, your homework is to read fiction at least one day a week. If you've got, pick a day, that's your rest day. If you're Catholic or Christian or whatever, you probably have a day built into your faith tradition. But if you don't, pick a day that is going to be your rest day and read fiction on that day, because fiction makes you human. Stories make you human. Squirrels can do things that are nonfiction, pass on instructions to other squirrels. They can't read a story and find out what's true and beautiful and good about themselves. We can. We're not squirrels. Don't be a squirrel. Read fiction. Our selections for next month are What Can You Do with a Problem? Or wait, it's What Do You Do with a Problem by I think the last name of the author is Yamada. That's the children's read aloud. And then A Monster Calls, which was just a movie. I haven't seen the movie yet, but the book is just heart-rendingly beautiful. So bring your tissues for that one. And then the adult book for June on the theme of suffering is The Moviegoer by Walker Percy. And I kind of want to talk about that one for suffering, because in it he talks about the malaise and how malaise itself, this feeling of bleh, can be suffering, even though it's more like a feeling of numbness. So I just kind of want to talk about that next month. So we'll see you the first Sunday of June, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on my YouTube channel. Bye, everybody. Have a great month. Say bye, ladies.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
How do I get out of here?
Veritas. Thanks. Bye.